Welcome to the Football Film Room Show. I'm Nick Kehoe. We got another great episode for you today. We're going to talk about some of the more big-armed, talented quarterbacks in the NFL. That will include Josh Allen, Drake Maye, Jordan Love. But before we do any of that, I want to go back to the year 2000, the New England Patriots, and Tom Brady. Now, all of you surely know who Tom Brady is, the type of career he had. Easily a top 25 quarterback in NFL history. You can't make an argument otherwise. Sorry, always tweaks Boston fans when I say something like that. Tom Brady, many regard him as the GOAT, as the best quarterback of all time. Not going to get into that here today. What I will say, though, is that when he was drafted back in 2000, you probably know he wasn't drafted very high. He was the 199th overall pick, drafted in the 6th round. And many people to this day will say that, well, the other 30 teams in the NFL, they missed on Tom Brady. Can't believe there were 198 picks before him. But that's not really the case. I don't think teams missed on Tom Brady. Brady was drafted 199th overall because that's the type of player he was in 2000. He didn't come to the NFL as an especially polished player. He wasn't especially physically gifted, and that's not necessarily what you need to play the position. But if you're not going to be physically gifted, you need to be a great processor. You need to be extremely accurate. You need to do all the little things well as a quarterback. And that's what Tom Brady eventually became. In his own words, his superpower was basically that he knew what the defense was doing before they ended up doing it. But that took some time for him to develop. It took him some time to turn into a quick processor. In fact, if you go back and watch the 2001 America's Game about the Patriots, produced by NFL Films, of course, there's a great scene where Brady describes a moment during his rookie year where he was left alone in a film room and he found his quarterback coach's notebook. And like any of us would do, he went and opened it up and found what the coach's evaluation was of him. And what it said was, slow on reads, slow to react, doesn't deliver the ball on time. Everything he needs to do quicker. Now, that could probably characterize a lot of rookie quarterbacks. And if Brady had just stayed like that, if he didn't develop, if he didn't grow, none of us would know his name. He wouldn't have had the career that he went on to have. But there was something inside of Brady that not a lot of other players had. And that was that desire, that ability to improve on his weaknesses, to get better. And that's one of the most difficult parts of evaluating the quarterback position, certainly coming out of college. And I'm not just talking about for some slapdick like me who's got a clicker at home and likes to watch film. I'm talking about for GMs, coaches, scouts. You can look at the All-22, and it's easy to spot traits. It's easy to spot physical traits. You can see a guy has a strong arm, or he's accurate, or he can read defenses quickly, or he can't read them quickly. You can see all those things. What you can't tell during the evaluation process is what is the quarterback's desire to get better? What is his aptitude for getting better? Now, that's why teams will go through the evaluation process. They won't just watch film. They'll try to interview the player. They'll interview the coaches, interview players who played with him in college because they want to know what he's like. But even that can be misleading sometimes. There are quarterbacks who are very physically gifted and are known for being gym rats. But that doesn't mean that they're going to get better or have a desire to get better in other areas of the game that are necessary for playing the quarterback position well. I mean, think about it. If you're a physical specimen, you've been playing quarterback, you're about to get drafted in the NFL, you've probably had a ton of success in college and high school and wherever else you played, and you've done so by running over guys, running past guys. Are you suddenly going to have a strong desire to change the way you play? You got to dance with the girl that brought you there in some respect. And that's how a lot of athletes feel. So it's really hard for evaluators to say, this guy's got flaws in his game, but I think he's going to be able to improve them at the NFL level. That's the big mystery. That's the crapshoot when it comes to quarterbacks and trying to project them from the college game to the NFL. And that brings us to Drake Maye. Now, Maye's situation is not exactly the same as Brady's. He wasn't drafted 199th overall. He was drafted 3rd overall, so there was a clear recognition of how good his skills were in college. The fact that he's playing really well right now isn't necessarily a surprise when you consider where he was drafted. That being said, there were a lot of flaws to his game in college. And these were big flaws. These were flaws in critical areas. The physical talent was always there. He has a strong arm. He's big. He's athletic. He can make second reaction plays. What he didn't do consistently in college is have good ball placement. He sprayed the ball all over the place. He missed easy throws, layups, wasn't a reliably accurate passer, didn't play with great rhythm and timing consistently. His footwork in the pocket was an area of concern, even for the people that loved him coming out of college. But to me, one of my biggest concerns wasn't the footwork necessarily. I think that is fixable. My concern with him was pocket presence. He did not have a good feel within the pocket. He needed a lot of functional space to throw. He would drift into his throw, so that would bring him into the pass rush. He'd step up unnecessarily, again, creating his own pressure. He would perceive pressure that wasn't there. So he needed a lot of space, which you generally get in college, but he needed a lot of space to throw. That's generally not something that you get in the NFL. Now, all those traits are not easy to correct. Some of them are kind of ingrained in who you are as a quarterback. So personally, my thought on Drake Maye was I like his physical talent. I'm concerned about these other areas. But that's where that X factor that I was talking about earlier with Brady comes into play. We don't know until we see it in the NFL after a couple of years what a guy's propensity is to improve those weaknesses of his. And Drake Maye, I don't know if he's the best quarterback in this class. I'm definitely not ready to say that, especially after the year that Jaden Daniels had last year. There are 5 other quarterbacks who maybe we just need to give them a little more time, but I think Drake Maye is by far the most improved quarterback from college. There's no question there. I even wrote about that this offseason. I broke down his game even before he started having the big year he's having right now. I talked about how he really improved on the areas that were troublesome areas in college. And that has increased even more dramatically under Josh McDaniels in year 2 here. Now, the biggest thing for Drake Maye to me is the ball placement. He is accurate on downfield throws. He can make touch throws. He doesn't miss the layups. I haven't seen him spray the ball really this year. And when you can put the ball where you want to, it really does open up a lot of things. You don't have to get to that 3rd or 4th read in your progression, because if you see a little bit of an opening with number 1 or number 2, you can let it rip and you have a good chance for a completion. And that's what we've seen with Drake Maye this year. Now, it certainly helped to have Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator. They do a lot of good things with motion, personnel distribution. They'll put their running backs, tight ends on the outside, give the quarterback a defined picture so they know what the defense is. But what you've seen with Maye so far is that those first or second reads, those guys are either open or he feels confident enough to let it rip and make accurate throws to those guys. So we haven't seen him have to sit in the pocket, work to number 3, work to number 4, for those reasons that I just mentioned, but also he's got that scrambling ability. If 1 or 2 aren't open, he can just go, he can run, and teams are having trouble stopping him. So he's been extremely impressive through the first 9 games of the season. Many are talking about him as the MVP. I do need to wait on that. I need to see how he finishes out the season when he's not just playing teams like the Saints, the Titans, the Browns, the Falcons. Yes, I know the Patriots beat the Bills. It was a big upset. That was kind of an any given Sunday type thing in my view. And he played really well in that game, don't get me wrong. But as teams get more tape on Drake Maye, there are some areas where you're seeing a little bit of chinks in the armor over the last couple of weeks. I think he's been sacked 6 times in each of the last 2 games. And it hasn't just been the pass rush going crazy. There have been some sacks that were completely on Drake Maye. He either moved up into the pressure, which he still has a bit of a tendency to do. He kind of doesn't have a good feel in the pocket yet for navigating pressure from within the pocket. If there's pressure, he either looks to escape or run, or he kind of moves further into that pressure. And what you've seen with the Browns, what you've seen with the Falcons is that they've done a much better job of containing him, not giving those easy escape lanes. So when he feels that desire to move, there's somebody there to wrap him up and sack him. Now, it hasn't really slowed the Patriots down or hasn't really slowed Maye down. He's still been playing excellent, but it's created a few more negative plays. And as they start to play some better competition, you might see that become a little bit more of a factor. But aside from that, there really aren't many complaints about Maye's game. Now, that's probably a good segue to Josh Allen. because Drake Maye is in very many ways like Josh Allen in terms of just he's a physically talented quarterback. He's a big quarterback. He's, I don't know if mini-me, he's a mini-me version of Josh Allen. I don't know if that's the exact right way to describe him, but that's how I see him. He's not quite as big, not quite as athletic, not quite as strong, not quite as fast, not quite as quick, doesn't have quite as strong of an arm. But both of them came into the NFL kind of relying on those physical traits. And again, it was a question of how much could you get out of those physical traits? Could the quarterback conquer the mental aspects of the game? And Josh Allen is a shining example of a quarterback who can. I mean, speaking of accuracy issues, he was not a very accurate quarterback in college. And then he wasn't an accurate quarterback in his first couple years in the NFL either. But by the time 2020 rolled around, that's when he really, I think he honed in his mechanics. He made some adjustments, turned this physical specimen into a player who could perform with precision. And that's what you've really seen over the last 2 years since Joe Brady took over as offensive coordinator. He's done a great job of settling Josh Allen down, settling him into games. He's added some scheme that almost forces Josh Allen to get in rhythm. Against the Chiefs, for instance, his first 4 or 5 plays, he called plays where Josh Allen did not have a choice. The design of the play was basically, Josh, you have to throw the ball here. You have no other choice. And I think doing that has helped Allen settle into games. Now he came off a stretch over the last month or so where he's been starting to turn the ball over again, starting to leave the pocket a little early, getting into a little bit of those bad habits that we saw earlier in his career. But against the Chiefs, something about the Chiefs, they bring out the best in Allen because he was once again precise from the pocket. He was MVP Allen this past Sunday against the Chiefs. He was able to see through all of Steve Spagnuolo's disguises, or most of them anyway. And that's when you play a Steve Spagnuolo defense, you're going to be facing a lot of disguise, a lot of post-snap movement, and Allen was ready for it. And the Bills had three big plays at least where the Chiefs were showing one look pre-snap and rotating post-snap, and Allen saw it every single time, deciphered it, and either got the ball out with timing or recognized that he had time in the pocket, didn't flee too early, and then got the ball out to his playmakers for big plays. Now, if Allen keeps playing like that, 23 of 26, only 3 incompletions, no turnovers, he is nearly impossible to stop. And if he can bottle what he did against the Chiefs and play like that throughout the playoffs, this will be the year that the Bills finally get over the hump. Now, the last player I want to talk about is a quarterback who's cut from the same cloth as Josh Allen and Drake Maye, and that's Jordan Love. Just another physical specimen at the quarterback position, strong arm, can use his legs, although he doesn't use them as much as Maye and Allen do. But Jordan Love, he's quickly becoming one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. But like Maye and like Allen, he still has flaws to his game that he needs to iron out because they prevent him from being that consistently great quarterback. And that's really what separates the good from the great, right? It's the ability to do the same thing every single week. There are a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL who can give you a couple great games a year, 5 great games a year, but the best ones do it every single week or pretty damn close to it. And for Jordan Love, he's still not quite there yet. Everyone was ready to pronounce him as the next great quarterback after the Packers beat the Steelers. He threw for 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Many had that as his statement game, welcome to the NFL, or statement to the NFL game, whatever you want to call it. I didn't quite see it that way. I wrote last week about how the Steelers defense kind of allowed a lot of those things to happen. That Jordan Love didn't really do that many special things on that night. It was really, 260 of his passing yards were yards after the catch. He was throwing short passes. He threw 3 touchdowns that were all short passes. 2 of them were screens. One was an arrow screen. One was a bubble screen. The other was a quick throw on like a little angle or option route to Tucker Kraft. And the Steelers did 2 things terribly that night. Terrible tackling, and they tried to use a lot of disguise, but their timing with it was way off. They held the disguise too long, or they tried to be so cool with it that they were late to get into position. So there were a lot of plays where guys were just out of place, and that allowed for a lot of yards after catch. And then the 2 other big plays that Jordan Love had in that game were third down throws where they weren't really great decisions. They weren't great precise throws. There was a little bit of, you only live once on those throws. Threw the ball up on third down twice. Tucker Kraft came down with one. Another one Christian Watson came down with because the Steelers' safety kind of mistimed his jump. And he got away with it on both plays. Had they not converted those 2 third downs, the game is completely different. But those are not plays that you look at, and I promise you Matt LaFleur was not in the film room with Jordan Love saying, hey, great job on those plays. Those are not plays that you're going to get away with on a regular basis. And this past week against the Panthers, he didn't. He made a couple of those throws downfield. One of them should have been picked. Another one was kind of like the throw to Christian Watson, just kind of hung up in the air. But instead of a defender mistiming his jump, there were 2 defenders to take the receiver, and a Panthers defender, a safety, just sitting there, basically was able to fair catch the ball, got an interception, returned it back in the Packers' territory, and the Panthers would go on to score a touchdown and take a 13-6 lead. Those are the types of mistakes that Jordan Love is still making, and he's been able to get away with them at times, but you can't live that way. He's not going to be able to get away with those, and it's going to come back and bite the Packers in a critical moment if he keeps doing it. It certainly did on Sunday against the Panthers. But there were a couple other plays in that game that just, I don't know if he's not seeing the field well or he wasn't seeing the field well or if he was just overreactive to pressure. Packers haven't been great in pass pro this year, so maybe that's getting to him just a little bit. But very first play of the game, he had a touchdown or at least a big play to his tight end. It was really the design of the play, and he didn't throw it. It was a play where the Packers were in like a 3-by-1 formation, I guess a nub formation or a 1-by-3, you would call it, where the tight end was to the backside and he was in line. Teams do that often so that the corner to that side will sit down low. He's responsible for that tight end. And then they'll run a crossing route from the other side behind that corner. No one ends up picking him up and he ends up being wide open. Kind of a common concept, common practice in the NFL. This was the first play of the game. This was a play that the Packers were probably talking about all week, and for whatever reason, Jordan Love didn't throw it. I think he got a tiny bit of pressure. I wouldn't even call it pressure. I think he saw a Panthers jersey flash, and that led to him looking elsewhere and getting off the throw. But that was one he definitely should have hit. There was another play right before the end of the first half. The Packers were going in. They had a double post called, and the intention with this play is for the first post to remove the safety. The second post widens the corner with their stem, and then they cut over the middle. There was a huge window for Jordan Love to throw it. Again, he did not because he felt a little bit of pressure. And it really wasn't legitimate pressure, not at the NFL level. But he instead of delivering the ball to the post or just sliding to his right a little bit to make sure he had more time, he fled the pocket, ended up leaving the touchdown on the field. He threw an incompletion, and the Packers would have to settle for a field goal. So there are a few of these plays that you see in the game. It's like 90% of Jordan Love's game is really, really good. But that 10%, that kind of leads to the inconsistency in his game and the Packers' offense's game. And he has the ability to correct it. We saw him last year go through a long stretch where he didn't turn the ball over at all in the second half of the year. So I wouldn't necessarily be concerned if I'm the Packers by any means. But there are some just some habits he still needs to get better at. Like throwing off his back foot. He still does that a lot. And look, it's nice to have that skill set. It's nice to have that in your toolbox to be able to make throws from off-balance positions, but you shouldn't be making those types of throws when there's no need to, because that can lead to worse accuracy. It can lead to you getting your feet stuck in the ground. It can lead to you not being able to work through your progressions or being able to move in the pocket when you start leaning on that back foot and throwing off of it. And there were, again, a couple plays against the Panthers where maybe they weren't monumental plays, but they would have been drive extenders. And so he's got to clear a lot of that stuff out of his game. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to seem like I think Jordan Love is having a bad year. I think he's having a really good year. He's more than capable of leading the Packers to wherever they want to go. But it's just a matter of that consistency. And there are certain things that he needs to correct to be able to have that consistency. Because all it takes once you get into the playoffs is one bad game. One bad game and your season might be over, as we all know. That's it for today's show. Thank you all for listening. Once again, I'll encourage you to go visit footballfilmroom.com. That's where we put all of our All-22 breakdowns. Got a lot of different content up there. If you feel inspired, please leave a review on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to this podcast. I've noticed there's been a considerable drop-off in reviews talking about how handsome I am. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about or are new to the show, I think my mom was getting on there and leaving reviews talking about how handsome she thought the host was. Or maybe it was my brother, or maybe it was one of my friends just messing with me. But either way, let's try to pump those numbers up. Would be greatly appreciated. Hope everybody has a great NFL weekend, and I'll see you all next time.